The time of filming this, it was July 10th, 2018. On the 10th of every month, it's another anniversary of my reef tank. So today makes 4 years and 8 months of the 400-gallon running as well as the Anemone cube. So I should have taken pictures or video earlier in the day when the lights were on, but I frankly forgot. So instead, I thought I'd film it during the actinic period. The tank is being completely lit with XHOs, which is basically super actinics made with LEDs only, and everything glows and just looks so beautiful. I wanted to capture some of this for you. So the video may look rather dim on your monitor, and I can only recommend that you go into a dark room to watch this. Tell your spouse you got to get into the closet for a little bit and look at your smartphone and watch this. If it's too dark, I apologize. I'm not going to mess with it. It just is what it is. The 400-gallon is doing very well. One of the things that I really appreciate on a daily basis is I don't look in my tank and see some coral is dying. It just seems like everything continues to grow. There may be some aggression between two corals where one stings another, but I don't have STN or RTN issues. And I haven't had that problem in a long, long time. Which leads me to wonder, what causes that specifically, and how can we avoid it? And how can new people in the hobby avoid it? Because it's so frustrating to go spend your hard-earned money on a new frag, put it in your tank, it's growing fine for just a little while, and then poof, it turns into a white stick. That is super frustrating. And I totally understand that feeling because I've seen it happen to me. I came home with a coral a few months ago from a trip to Houston, and when I got home, I dipped it and I put it in my tank, and the next morning it was bone white. But that was just instant death, so I can't really attribute it to any problem with the tank. Something just wasn't great for that one coral, for whatever reason. But the point is, a lot of you feel like everything in your tank is just right, and yet you still watch a coral go up in smoke. And that's what I'm talking about when I talk about STN, which is, actually STN is slow tissue necrosis, and RTN is rapid tissue necrosis. I did a big reset on this reef tank last September with Dwayne, and many of you saw the video by now. If you haven't, it's worth a watch. We pull out a huge 3 and 4 foot section of coral in one piece out of my reef. And all the little things we planted, whatever that was, 6, 8, 9 months ago, is now turning into nice little colonies that are filling in and giving the reef its nice profile. A lot of the activity is on the right end of the tank. We're looking at the reef from behind, from inside the fish room right now, so the left end of the tank in this picture. And a lot of the sticks don't move, but yet their colors glow, and you'll see some of that here in a moment. Spock decided to get in almost every shot. That's my huge Nassau tank that I've had since 2004. The Anemone cube is part of the same sump that this 400-gallon drains into. So when people ask me, well, what kind of filtration does that tank have? It's all shared with the main reef. There are something like 30, 35 anemones in this 60-gallon cube, which is a Starfire glass tank. It has 12 or 13 clownfish in it. It's got, as you see, rose bubble tips. There are some green bubble tips. There are some tan ones with white tips that are in the foreground right under Dory. And as you can see, she's about 2.5 to 3 inches long at this point. She's just about ready to move out of this tank. I've enjoyed her since she was a 1-inch fish, but she's now at the point where I need to introduce her into the bigger tank and introduce her into all the other tanks. And hopefully everyone's going to like her and she will play nice in the big tank. The bubble coral has been in the tank now, that bright green coral in the lower right, has been in the tank for about 3 years. I got it from a fish store over in the other side of the Metroplex. And that store's gone, as far as I know, so it doesn't really matter where I got it. There's a huge acan colony that's in the dead 6 o'clock position in this part of the video right now. That originally was just green, 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 and very boring. And I love that all this orange came out, and it's peeking out everywhere. And it seemed like it would only grow orange where on the leading edge, but now it's growing orange everywhere. So apparently the water is just right to make that coral happy. The roses, of course, are lovely. I can't get enough of those. I kind of wish they were in the front, but they are where they are. I Don't feed the anemones anything. I have an entire video about bubble tip anemones. And yes, I know, you don't see any bubbles. You see lots of tentacles, and that just is what it is in my tank. I don't feed them directly, I feed the fish. And at the very end of this video, you'll get to see the fish being fed in this tank. And so you'll see what little bits of particulates get into that tank. I'm really not feeding these anemones at all. Here is the frag tank that is now ready to put some frags in. There's a couple leathers in there, and there's a bunch of anemones and a cleaner shrimp and 5 or 10 fish. And then we're back to the 400-gallon reef. So that is a bright green leather coral that was grown from a 1-inch fraglet. And behind it you can see some of the sea bay anemone. And there's a big stick right there standing up. And then here is the part of the reef I really like looking at the most, especially from above. And I like to just look down and study these corals and, you know, enjoy their beauty because they really pop with color. If you aren't spending time every single week looking down inside your reef, you're doing yourself a disservice. Because while this view from the side looks really, really pretty, from above, 10 times better. And if you have any clams, clams look better from above as well because their color is completely different than when you look at a tank from the side. So get up on your step ladders, turn off your pumps, and look straight down and enjoy your tank. You know, that's a perfect time to see if any of your corals are shifting or have moved or bumped into another or need to be rescued. And you want to get them back into position on the rock work where they can continue to grow and thrive. On these mini anniversaries, I don't do anything special other than document the tank. And that usually involves taking a bunch of close-up macro shots, getting a full tank shot of the reef for that month, and just, you know, that's it. But then on the actual, you know, 1-year anniversary, that's when I open the bottle of champagne to celebrate another year. I can't drink champagne every single month. I'd never get anything done. For those of you that are new to my channel, let me just tell you a little bit about the system. It's got a giant skimmer underneath. It's got a calcium reactor. It's got a reactor filled up with carbon that's old and needs to be dumped out and replaced with fresh carbon. I do that once a month. And there's a top-off system that adds water throughout the day and night to make sure that it replaces all the water that was lost during evaporation. I have recently resumed dosing vodka, which is something that I haven't done in many, many years, and I've decided to use that as a way to lower the nitrates in the reef tank. Vodka is one of the known methods of lowering nitrate, and I'm only in my 2nd week, so it's probably going to take a couple of months to hit the right amount that will drop the nitrates in this reef tank. And the reason you want lower nitrates is because your corals will grow more quickly. Now, do I need them to grow more quickly? Not necessarily, but they really are rather high, and if I get new corals that aren't used to high nitrate, it's very hard for them to adapt to the tank quickly enough and survive. So while all my reef continues to live in the water it's used to, new arrivals may have some issues, and I want to avoid that if I can. If you don't want to use vodka, you can use vinegar or you can use sugar. These are things you want to Google and get all the information in your head first before you ever do anything new with your tank. But don't just say, oh, my nitrates are up to 10, I need a dose of vodka. That is not the case. My tank is at 40 or above, and so I'm using it to bring it down. And if you're wondering why is it at 40, well, I haven't done a water change in forever because I was trying out a brick that I hoped to remove the nitrate, and it just didn't work for me. Maintenance-wise, the biggest job I do for this tank is clean the glass. Clean the glass every day, it seems like, or at least every other day. And every once in a while, I do intense cleaning with a razor blade or a credit card. But for the most part, it's one of those cleaning magnets you can use on the glass. I clean the skimmer collection cup out about once a week, maybe every 2 weeks, because it has a squeegee inside of it that cleans the cup, you know, 8 times a day for 1 minute. So really I'm just getting the gunk out that's built up over time. And I feed the tank every single night. And so that's my hard work right there, is just making sure things are clean and tidy and well fed. I make it a point to test the water in my tank every single week. I usually recommend Saturdays for that. And I dose Prodebio 2 times a month, which actually I'm behind. I need to get that in tonight because that should have happened on the 5th and I totally forgot until just this moment. Something that my tank needs, actually all 3 of my tanks need right now, is a replaced cleanup crew. I feel like every reef needs a cleanup crew in there to mow down the algae and keep the sand stirred and to basically help keep the system pristine and healthy. And if you don't have something in your tank doing that, you'll end up with all kinds of algae problems. For the most part, I keep my hand out of the tank as much as possible, and I only reach in when I have to move a coral that's too close to another one or to stand one up that's fallen over. For example, this bubble coral is very top heavy, and I want to put it in some kind of a cradle to help hold it in place so it'll stand up, because right now it's kind of on its side on the sand. I mentioned top off before, but I didn't mention I only use RODI water. That's what I recommend for any hobbyist. So if you are using tap water and conditioning it, you are doing your tank a disservice. It's not impossible. It's not that you can't do it, but it's so much easier to maintain a reef when you're using really pure water in the first place. And for a guy that hasn't done a water change in over 6 months, I would say that having pure water at your disposal is key to a successful reef. I really loved this particular view of the anemones. Now, I do constantly tell all of you that my reef lives in spite of me, but honestly, I have really good equipment on there, and I have notifications let me know if anything is amiss, and I constantly keep an eye on things. And because of all of that, the husbandry that I provide allows it to really do well. And I don't really have to deal with major catastrophes, which is always the one thing you want to avoid at all costs. Okay, so we're coming up on the feeding portion that I promised you. And I'm going to have to flip on a light because I felt like the video was too dark, and so it kind of actually looks like a reflection off the glass and kind of hideous, but I apologize for that. What I used for food tonight was some krill, some Rod's food, Rod's fish eggs, and there is some PE mysis, and some bloodworms. I always put bloodworms in the mix every single night, specifically to feed the copperband butterfly. I want to make sure that that fish stays fat and happy in my reef, and I just want to make sure there's extra food besides whatever it's looking for, because it hunts all day and all night long. The one fish that you did not see in this video whatsoever is my mandarin, who is super elusive, but I've had it since 2011, and it just seems to really enjoy the reef. It just doesn't want to hang out in front of the camera. So while I'm away from the tank here, still talking to you, I've actually gone around to feed the 400-gallon as well as the Frag system, and then I come back to this tank and I pour in what's left of the fish food into the tank. And that should be coming right about now. Or now. Or now. There it is. So you can see the anemones are not being fed any food. They are just getting whatever the fish poop on them. And, you know, maybe they're lucky if they get 1 or 2 krill, but there's 30-something anemones in there. So yeah, they are living pretty much off of light and good water. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you are new to the channel, please subscribe. If you didn't like this video yet, well, you still have time to click on it. And guess what? Tomorrow evening, I'll be filming Tammy's 800-gallon reef. We're finally getting the update sent to YouTube where you guys can see how gorgeous her tank is, and see what makes it tick, and talk about the things that went wrong, the things that made her sad, the things that make her happy. We're going to get into all of that, so that's something to look forward to. Happy reefing, guys.